Hello there, boxing fans around the world. Thank you for joining me once again here on Talk and Fight for another episode of Boxing News today. And we're going to start off with some news out of, I suppose, the Virgil Ortiz camp. Unfortunately, Virgil Ortiz, as we all know by now, had to back out of his expected fight against Staniosis simply because he was in the hospital and unable to fight. As you might recall, this is the third time that those two have tried to go into the ring and sort things out with their fists. But unfortunately, the two prior fights, I think Ortiz was in hospital suffering from COVID a couple of years ago. And then I believe Staniosis had appendicitis. Anyway, Floyd Schofield took over that particular headlining event and did quite well. Before we go there, though, let's talk about Boots Ennis, who has bolstered his place opposite the winner of Errol Spence and Terence Crawford. It was quite an impressive performance, I might say. The rising welterweight star retained his interim IBF welterweight title with a sensational 10th round technical knockout and finished tough as nails. The 147-pound contender, Roman Villa, in their main event down at the Jim Whalen Boardwalk Arena in Atlantic City, just a few miles away, well, about an hour's drive from Philadelphia, where Boots Ennis is from. It was a left-right combination from Ennis that deposited Villa into the canvas and ended the fight in the 10th round. Villa, he drops his record, but Jaron Ennis is now 31-0 and certainly ready to take on, if they will stay at the welterweight division, either Spence or Crawford, whoever wins that fight. So so Golden Boy moving along over to the Virgil Ortiz fight that didn't happen. Unfortunately, as we know, as I said, Ortiz has had some medical issues in the past, and they think what he might be suffering from is something called rhabdomyolysis. It's a breakdown of the muscle tissues and releasing myoglobin into the blood. And it's actually a condition that previously had affected Ortiz during his scheduled fight against Michael McKinson back in 2022, last year. Anyway, Ortiz was supposed to fight Staniosis in March of 2023, but the latter backed out, as I said, yes, due to an appendectomy. Rebooked for April. Ortiz backed out, suffering from a recurring case of rhabdomyolysis. So anyway, that fight, unfortunately, was postponed again due to Ortiz being in the hospital. And Floyd Schofield, Kid Austin, decided to take over in the main event, and he dropped Haskell Rose 3 times with a dominant unanimous decision of victory. And quite frankly, dominated every round and finally, pulled out a big decision live on DAZN. A great fight. And on that undercard, by the way, I want to mention one of my favorite female fighters, Marlen Esparza. She fended off a scrappy and, shall we say, more active foe to add another belt to her collection. The 2012 Olympic bronze medalist for the U.S. defended her lineal WBC, WBA flyweight title and picked up the WBO belt in a 10-round majority decision win over Argentina's Gabriela Alanis. The judges made it pretty close, with the exception of Javier Alvarez, who scored at 9-9-91, and created a bit of a controversy in doing so. But nonetheless, that bout, as I said, served as the undercard for Kid Austin's bout, coming to you live from the AT&T Center in San Antonio, Texas. By the way, I might add that Buenos Aires Alanis had vowed to knock out Esparza a week ahead of their fight. But it was Esparza who came out with mean intentions right from the opening bell, and the unified champ launched a left hook right out of the gate. Alanis was more active, both output of punches and her upper body movement, but Esparza was the more accurate, largely on the strength of her right hands over the top, over the Argentinian's guard. So there you go, a couple of fights out of San Antonio, well fought by both victors and both learners in the process. L is not loser, but learner, as Cedric Ben points out to me quite often. Might want to point out another result that just came in. According to WBO, number 8 fighter Sasaki assaulted Hoshi and keeps his WBO 147-pound belt, taking place in Japan. Fast rising Japanese sensation, WBA number 11, WBO number 8, Jin Sasaki, 16-1-1, 15 knockouts. 147 pounds, kept his WBO Asia Pacific welterweight belt by battering compatriot Hiroti Hoshi into submission at 1 minute 44 seconds of the 11th round. Also on the weekend, taking place in Japan. Sasaki, a young tiger at 21, has dethroned Ryota Toyoshima by upset stoppage and impressively flattened world-rated Kaiti Obora in his initial defense. Though an early knockout win was expected, Jin took time to halt Hoshi due to his tremendous durability. Finally, though, Sasaki caught up with him in a flurry of punches that prompted the referee's well-received great pictures, by the way, on fightnews.com for that victory. And if you take a look at fightnews.com, it was sorry, I got interrupted by the flurry of pictures, let alone flurry of punches that finally enabled the referee to intervene and stop the fight and prevent Hoshi from getting injured any further. Anyway, great fight out of Japan, again in the welterweight division, and a great number of photos from that fight if you go to fightnews.com. Now we'll move over to the heavyweight division, where we see that in Poland, WBA, IBF, WBO heavyweight champ Alexander Usyk and WBA mandatory challenger Daniel Dubois came face-to-face for the first time at their official press conference, along with the fact that the two men looked pretty evenly matched from a physical standpoint. And I must say Usyk looks better with that particular haircut. The champ and the challenger looking almost evenly matched in terms of weight. This time, though, fans felt Dubois would look so much bigger than Usyk. Came as another surprise with the announced ticket prices, actually. Alex Krysuk, Usyk's manager, said at the head table how his aim was to make the fight affordable to everyone, and with ticket prices starting at a lowly 11 euros. Wow, that's roughly $12 US or £9. It's clear that the August 26th fight will cost a fight fan a whole lot less cash than they used to forking out for the privilege of being live and in person on fight night. As has been pointed out, with the fight going on pay-per-view in the UK, expected to be around 25 quid, a boxing fan will actually pay less for an actual ticket than for TV coverage. As this writer from boxing247.com points out, in this time of greed and obsession with money, with so many people struggling with the cost of living, it is indeed refreshing and uplifting that the powers that be behind this heavyweight title fight have made a real and genuine effort to make it possible for the average Joe to be able to attend the fight. Good on Krzyzuk and company. Great news out of Poland. Now let's move along to Anthony Joshua. But before we get there, I need to open up with a little bit about Martin Bakole, who is looking to rematch against Michael Hunter. Sorry about that. Incoming news, but I just had to take that call, and I'll relate that news in a second. Martin Bakole is open to a Michael Hunter rematch, and Joseph Parker as he targets an eliminator. Says Ben Shalom, we like the Michael Hunter rematch. It makes sense. Says Martin Bakole could seek revenge against the American who inflicted the only defeat on the Congolese heavyweights record, a stoppage loss back in 2018. The reason I bring this up is because I found out that, in fact, among the various people who are sparring against Anthony Joshua, who is warming up to fight upcoming, as we all know, Dillian Whyte, it's interesting who he has selected as his sparring partners. He's now, Anthony Joshua, that is, a two-time unified heavyweight champion, former, that is, will renew his rivalry with Brixton's Dillian Whyte, and he's currently training in Texas. And they've actually mentioned a few of the people who are sparring against Joshua. I thought I'd bring them to your attention. Jeremiah Milton and Jamie Chishkeva, relatively unknowns to the casual boxing fan, especially me. But they've been brought in by Team AJ to give the Watford Warriors some looks during this clash. And they've also brought in Michael Hunter to push him ahead of his must-win domestic dust-up. This is according to The Sun over in the UK. Hunter, who's 35 years old, has shared the ring with some big names during his 10-year career, including former undisputed cruiserweight champion Alexander Usyk. So Joshua shared some post-training snaps with the hard hitters to his Instagram account, flexing with the trio as they dripped in sweat following several grueling and hard rounds. Now, according to, as I've said before, one of my favorite writers out of BoxingNews24.com, Charles Brunn, he says that Matchroom's Frank Smith believes the Anthony Joshua versus Dillian 2 rematch is a mega fight that the British public is dying to see and willing to pay the £27 on top of their DAZN subscription for their event on August 12th. Smith predicts the Joshua-Whyte number 2 fight will bring in 1 million buys on pay-per-view and says it's the biggest. Those numbers are staggering given the adverse reaction from fans on social media to this fight. According to Charles, he says the British fans that paid for their DAZN subscriptions thinking they were getting to be able to see Joshua and Canelo Alvarez as part of their yearly monthly subscriptions have got to be hopping mad right now. Canelo Alvarez is no longer with DAZN, having signed a 3-fight deal with PBC, and Joshua's fights are on pay-per-view. Smith seems to be in denial about how this has played out. Now that the 33-year-old Joshua, 25 wins, 3 losses, by the way, 22 knockouts, and Whyte are at this point in their careers. If this were 8 years ago, maybe the lofty 1 million Smith is talking about would be possible, but not anymore, he says. This fight has little hope of bringing anywhere close to 1 million buys, but you can never underestimate what the UK is willing to buy. For example, Tyson Fury's fight with the 39-year-old journeyman Derek Chisora sold out the 62,000 Tottenham's Hotspurs Arena, and fans didn't care that Chisora had lost 3 of his last 4 fights. They still gleefully bought tickets to see this horror. If British fans were willing to see Fury beat up Chisora, they might be keen on paying £27 to watch Joshua fight Whyte, who has arguably lost 3 out of 4 fights as well. Whyte is another Chisora type, said Frank Smith. I think this can do anywhere between 700,000 to 1 million. Will Joshua versus Whyte 2 bring in 1 million buys? Well, Joshua already knocked out Whyte in 2015, and there's no reason for a second fight. It's not like there was a competitive matchup. It was only interesting for the first 2 rounds. After that, Whyte was exhausted and just a punching bag for AJ from rounds 3 to the bitter end in the 7th. Said Smith, no, I want it to do the numbers I've set. When he was satisfied with the more realistic number of, say, 500,000 buys. You only have to look at Anthony Joshua, is that he's broken the record time and time again in his biggest fights. I think he did 1.25 million in the biggest fight, 1.2 in another, maybe it was 1.15. Joshua's popularity has taken a huge hit thanks to Alexander Usyk beating him twice. Smith and Hearn, though, are pricing Joshua's with White like AJ was still a world champion at the top of his game rather than a shot guy. No one else has done that, and this fight has all the right ingredients to create a build-up to hit those numbers, said Smith. It's on every platform. It's on DAZN. You can buy it everywhere. So exposure is going to be key. That's going to be simple because everyone's going to want to see this fight. I truly believe it can do those types of numbers. And, look at Dillian Whyte as well. This guy goes on. Go to boxingnews24.com. Take a look at Charles Brown's latest column because he rants and raves quite extensively about the fight not being able to hit that 1 million mark on pay-per-view. And arguably so. It's not a big fight over here in the North America fan base. Let's have a look at what Teddy Atlas had to say about Anthony Joshua's decline. He said he agrees that it's Joshua's defeat to Andy Ruiz that was a catalyst for the Brit's change in his performance and losing his aggressive style. And he has another theory to add to that with respect to the financial aspect of the former heavyweight champion. He said, when you talk about the Klitschko fight, bravo. He got off the floor with a guy who can hit with a right hand, bravo. That's the behavior of a champion. But the guy was 40 years old. Let's not forget that. Would he have gotten off the floor with a 30-year-old Klitschko? I don't know. But he did, and he behaved like a champion. What I take out of a fight is he never behaved quite the same again, finding a way doing what a champion does, getting up. With the Ruiz fight, everyone looked at the physical parts, but what I'm saying is he didn't behave like the way he did against Klitschko. I have to believe it's this, and I know in my mind he didn't want to behave. He's too rich to behave that way. I'm going to make it real simple. When it was against Klitschko, it meant everything. He didn't have a bank account anywhere near as big as he does now, and it was in front of his people. He didn't have to get off the floor against Ruiz. His bank account was beyond all numbers as he was safe. He was already safe. In boxing, you should never be safe, says Teddy Atlas. So we'll see what happens when Joshua faces White on August 12th. And will we see a brand new Anthony Joshua who's been sparring, as I said, against some heavy hitters or not? Let's move along to another heavy hitter, Nate Diaz, former MMA fighter who's going into his debut boxing performance. And he's come out with some statements regarding his suspected brain injuries. He absolutely says he's not suffering from any related concussion injury, despite being notorious for his rather bloody and brutal fights in the MMA. The American fighter dismissed claims he may be suffering from a potential CTE, which stands for chronic traumatic encephalopathy. It's often found in the brains of retired fighters. He said, I feel like every fight is pretty fucked up. Someone's attacking you with their hands or their legs or whatever. I always think I'm going to be aware that I could be knocked out at any time. And that's what makes me train harder than most people. I think that I'm just conscious of that. And that's the reason why I stay conscious the whole time anyway. And I don't really be eating punches like how they say, because the forearms and the elbows, they cut me up. But I've been in a boxing gym and it mightn't look like it, but I just roll with any of these punches that anybody lands. I'm not just walking in like a meathead into punches. People try to talk about me like that, but I've never been knocked out. Now, the writer points out he was knocked out in 2013 by Josh Thompson. I've never been stunned stupid or nothing like that. And these fuckers will try to talk about how I talk. They're saying I've got CTE or some shit. And it's like, bro, I've been talking this way the whole motherfucking time. I ain't got nothing to do with getting hit or none of that. And I'm smarter now than ever. I'm not trying to be knocked out. So I believe Jake Paul's got a long night ahead of him. I believe I do as well, but I'm not afraid of it. And I'm ready to rock and roll. Well, my friends, that's it for me here on Talk and Fight. I appreciate you joining me. Remember, like, share, subscribe, hit that notification bell. And please join me at 4 p.m. Eastern Time when we have Knuckle Up, hosted by Mike Orr. Thank you.